What's going on? Welcome back to the Mo Air Podcast. This week's guest is Geoff Butler from Sacramento, California. Geoff is a private pilot and he's working on his instrument rating now. All right, Geoff, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Geoff Butler. I live in Sacramento, California. Private pilot as of just March, which is that's just 4 months ago now, so
Yeah.
not very long. And starting on my instrument rating, as you alluded to in the intro, but it's a long way before I ever punch that ticket.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. That's crazy that you just got your ticket in March. I didn't know that. I was watching all your videos. I could have swore you've been a pilot for years.
Yeah, pretty recent. March 25th was my check ride. It took me a long time. So I was, some of my videos I was still training, like on my long cross countries and stuff like that. So some of the stuff you saw was from that. It took me a long time to get my license. The journey was sort of a long and frustrating road, but I eventually got there.
Yeah, that happens for a lot of people, man. But that's really cool that you're a new pilot and you've already got all these cool videos out. What got you started in aviation? Like, what was your first memory of like, I want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. My first memories, I remember when I was a teenager, when I was like 13, 14. I saw something on TV about ultralights, and I wanted so badly to learn how to fly an ultralight. And I just, like where I lived, it was no way, there was nowhere flat where I lived. I was up in the foothills. I'm not sure my parents would have let me do it anyway, but I was obsessed with the idea of an ultralight, and then that sort of led into the idea of a gyrocopter.
Oh yeah.
One of those things. But and then I let it go for a while, and then I travel a lot for my job. I'm on the road all the time, and I'm on these planes, and natural curiosity, like, oh, the engines on this plane are louder than than the last plane I was on. What kind of engines are on this plane? Like, uh, man, it really felt like we climbed really steep, and like, so I was really more interested in commercial aviation, and I didn't really have any real interest in GA, especially. Um, and so just the way life works sometimes, a guy who I was working with a lot had a Bonanza, and he lives in Vegas, and if we were working somewhere that was within a reasonable flying distance, he would fly himself there, and instead of flying commercial there. And we'd be there for a few days, so a couple times like went up with him, like, hey, let's on lunch break, let's fly over to Catalina and get lunch, and
Oh, that would be awesome.
so went up in his plane a couple times. And um one time we were working in Phoenix, and he's like, hey, you want to fly home with me to Vegas? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so I flew home with him from Phoenix, or I flew out of Glendale, flew into Arizona, into North Las Vegas. He wanted me to land the plane. I was like, he's like, pointed at the numbers. I'm like, no, you pointed at the numbers. But it's funny now, like in retrospect, I had been up in a 172 once when I was pretty young. A job thing. I was shooting a fire with a camera in the back seat of a 172.
Oh wow.
Which was kind of wild. But he was talking about, like, yeah, I like this Bonanza because it's got all this extra room, and I was like, what are you talking, man? This is tiny. Like, I didn't even realize, until I got into like a 150, like, oh yeah, that Bonanza was roomy.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
um so that like got me interested in aviation, in general aviation. But by that time, I was already dating or married, I guess, to my wife. And my wife's first husband actually died in a plane crash. And so he was a crop duster and tragically died in a plane crash.
That's insane. I'm sorry to
And
hear that.
yeah, well, and so I never broached the subject with my wife that I was interested, in flying these little planes. She was cool. She knew I was flying with my buddy, but I just never said anything. And as the years went by, there's a YouTuber, who Juan Brown is, Blanco Lirio. He goes by on YouTube.
I'm not sure that I do know him. I'll look him
Oh
up
yeah,
though.
yeah. You should check him out. He's not far from me. I'm in Sacramento. He's in Grass Valley. It's just up the foothills up from where I am. But I was actually in Australia working. I grew up in Chico, which is a little town about 90 miles north of here. And the near Chico, there's the Oroville Dam. Lake Oroville is a big reservoir, and the spillway was failing, and they were worried about the entire dam failing. And Juan would go up in one of his planes, and he would like just shoot video like with his phone out of his plane, and he would post these updates. And so I was following him for these updates. And then he got back to his regular programming talking about aviation, and so like how it works on YouTube. You start watching aviation content, and you're going to get served more aviation content. And so I went deeper and deeper into this, like av geek aviation nerd, to the
Yeah.
point where like, at some point I probably could have passed the written, like just even though I wasn't trying to become a pilot, just, because I was consuming so much aviation content. Um, and then something happened. For Christmas, my wife was trying to figure out what to get me, and I'm impossible to buy for because I just buy whatever I want. I mean, look at all the toys I have around me here, right? So, I feel bad for her. She can never, it's really hard for her to figure out what to buy me. So she was talking to, so her late husband was the son of an air show pilot, and he's still around. And she called him and it's like, hey, Geoff is like so into airplanes, and like, what can I get him for Christmas? And he's like, well, what about flying lessons? And she's like, oh, what about like a simulator or something? And he's like, no, flying lessons. And she just kept, well, is there something on the ground? And he finally is like, hey, Kim, this it was an accident. It was, maintenance related, like this, he was 50 feet off the ground. This is not, like, you're not going to lose another husband. So she bought me a discovery flight, and I ended up doing that discovery flight on my birthday. And then, she was cool with me. She was asking me, do you want to take lessons? I was like, yes, I do. I really do. And she was totally cool with it. And so it took me a while to find the right school and instructor. And so I finally did in March of 25. I finally started training. That had some starts and stops, but yeah. So that's the kind of crazy. Isn't that sort of a crazy background that?
That's an insane story, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is wild. What are the chances that you not coming from an aviation background and then getting married to somebody who lost a husband to aviation as well?
Right.
And now you're doing it and enjoying it, and that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, and and she's so supportive. My wife is awesome, and she knows that this is something that I really want to do, and that it, makes me happy, and it gives me something to, focus on. It gives me, like something to learn. Right, I always want to learn new things. Right,
Yeah.
and aviation's perfect for that. Right,
Yeah.
there's like
Endless
unlimited,
possibilities.
right?
Yeah.
Like infinity things to learn.
Yeah.
So
Even when you
yeah.
think you know it all, there's something else will happen, and you're like, wow, I
Totally.
didn't
Right. Right. I
never
mean,
even
you
thought
hear it
about
all the
that.
time. Like
Yeah.
you'll hear guys with 15,000 hours talk about like, yeah, I learned something today, like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. You can learn forever in this thing, which is one of the things I love about it.
That's really cool, man. So you got your discovery flight going, and then you found the school that you wanted to learn from. What did you start flying at that school? Like, was it a 150, a 172, a Cherokee?
Yeah, so so there was a few things that I was looking for. Like I knew I wasn't at all interested in a 141 situation, you know. This is not a career for me. I'm too old for a career change. It's just a hobby. So I wanted a, definitely a Part 61. Um, what I was really hoping for was to find a career instructor,
Yeah,
not someone who was on their way to the airlines. And I actually did my first like real lesson I did with a buddy of mine who's a CFI, but he lives. It was funny. We had planned lunch like months before, and that lunch ended up being the same week that I did the discovery flight. Did the discovery flight on a Monday, and we had lunch on Friday. So I was like, yeah, and I got to go up in a plane, and like I was telling him the whole story, and we're having lunch, and we finished eating, and he goes, well, you want to go fly? And I was like, yeah. Unfortunately, he's a little too far away. It
yeah,
took me an hour and a half to get home from that lesson, that after lunch lesson. And I just couldn't do that. So I was looking
right.
for the right match here in Sacramento. And it took a while. It was, we have some great schools here and stuff, but most of the big schools are targeted toward people who are trying to get to the airlines, and there's a couple smaller schools, but for different reasons I didn't want to go with them. This one that I went with, it's a club, it's a nonprofit. um, the prices are much lower than everyone else in town. At the time I started flying, they had a 150 and a 152, so I started flying in those. I first soloed in the 152. The 152 was a nicer plane. They've since done a lot of work on the 150, and that's a super nice plane now. But the 152 was offline for maintenance reasons, or the 172 was offline for maintenance reasons that they own. And when it came back, I told my instructor at the time, I was like, "Hey, I think I'd like to try out the 172." He's like, "Yeah, we can do it if you want. Schedule it." It costs more money, obviously. We went up, and he warned me. He's like, just know everything's going to happen a lot faster.
Yeah,
This 172, it's a November model, 1977, but it's had the Super Hawk STC, so it has a 180 horse motor and a climb prop.
yeah,
And that thing on a cool day, I mean, you'll reach pattern altitude uh, before you make your crosswind turn. That thing
yeah.
climbs like crazy. And so you know everything was happening before I was ready for it on that flight, that lesson. And what ended up happening, that instructor, my first instructor, who was great, he was in a motorcycle accident, so
Oh
nothing
man.
related to aviation, but he had to stop flying for a bit. And I was doing great under him, except I could not figure out how to land. I just, like, I just could not wrap my head around it. I had some good landings, but it was just by accident. Um, but he was injured, and so the school was like, "Hey, we have the perfect person." They put me with a different CFI, and she goes, so now, like, I've missed a month of training, right, while I'm waiting to get on her schedule. This place, it's a great little school club, but 3 aircraft and a lot of pilots, right? So
Yeah,
you have to schedule 4 weeks out. You can't just say, like, yeah, I want to fly tomorrow, or I want to fly next week. It's just, there's not going to be anything available.
right.
So it took me a month to get on her calendar, and we went up, and she's like, okay, well, let me just get a gauge of where you're at. Go ahead and let's just do a lap of the pattern. In the back of my head, I'm like, I don't think she knows that I don't know how to land. and, and so we do a lap of the pattern, and I just absolutely crater the landing. It's just a terrible landing. And she goes, okay, go around. Go ahead and make another lap. I see the problem. And literally that next lap of the pattern, I had it. I had it figured out. She fixed it.
What was it?
So two things. So my first CFI was very much and I know this is the eternal debate. He was very much a pitch for air, speed power for altitude. So his philosophy was you set your power, when you're beaming the numbers, and you don't touch it again until landing's assured. You just leave your power right where it is and just work the yoke. And he was a crab and kick guy. So right at the last second, hit some rudder and line up that nose wheel. But my second instructor was like, no, you're going to make all kinds of little power adjustments along the way. You're going to pick that spot in the windscreen and just keep everything coming out from there. And, you're going to have to add a little bit and pull a little bit. And it made sense right away. And she said, crab and kick works great once you know what it looks like to line up the airplane longitudinally with the runway. Right. She's like, so you have to start doing it as soon as you turn final. And she's like, you'll get practice all the way down final and you'll be already set by the time you get to the runway. So now I could go either way, like I can wait to start working the rudders until I'm on short final now. But she's like, you're never going to figure it out if the first time you see it, you're 6 feet off the runway.
Right.
So yeah, that was, that fixed it. I soloed with her, and then she got hired. She got hired to fly boxes for one of the big shipping companies. And
nice.
so then went to yet another instructor, and same thing, big gap in the training. And I'm short, but I'm not narrow. So when now it was me and another, full-size adult male in the plane, with the 152, like we were having to, like, we couldn't put enough gas in, it was like,
right. Yeah.
Like, man, we're not going to have much of a lesson, with 14 gallons of fuel, so then I made the decision to switch back to the 172. And also at the time, the 172 was a lot more available, because of the price difference. Most people preferred to fly the 150 and the 152. So back in the ones, now in the 172, and with a new instructor, it took me a bit to get landings down in that plane. There's just a lot more rudder authority or elevator authority, and I was over flaring every time, and I just couldn't. And it's funny. I go back. I have videos, right? And I have videos of me landing the 152, and like, I'm just sitting there in the round out, and as soon as I feel my butt start to drop, you see me pull the yoke back like that. But doing that in the 172, you're going to be back 15 feet over the runway. It's a much more
gradual,
fine. Yeah. So it took a little bit of time, and then I finally got that figured out. He sent me on my my solo cross countries. Well, so this is another. So I had to do a stage check before my solo cross countries, and did the stage check, got signed off, and then it took from that point it took almost 3 months to get them done, because here in the Sacramento Valley we had just this crazy run where it was fogged in every single day.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was wild. We had, and like the occasional day where there wouldn't be fog, I'd be out of town. I'd be working in LA. So it took forever. And like, it had been so long since I'd flown. At that point, I was like, I need to go up with an instructor again,
right.
like,
yeah, just for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I just, I didn't feel confident. It's like, well, I haven't touched a plane in a long time. It was fine. I went up with my instructor and it was fine. So now we're waiting for another clear day for me to go get my my cross countries done. So I finally got them done. And then, there's the usual. I know everyone has the same, there's maintenance and weather and, all of that stuff. And it just, it ended up, it was a year actually to the day from my first lesson, my check ride.
That's awesome though. Yeah, that's really cool that you got to stay in the same area and finish it out that way. Where did you go for your first cross country?
So I knew from the day I started my training where I wanted to go for my first cross country. So I told you I live in Sacramento, but I grew up in this little town, Chico. It's 90 miles. Actually, by air, it's like 72 from my airport to Chico Airport. It's like 72 nautical miles, and it's like that's where I want to go. I want to go back to my home airport.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's towered. It's a Delta. So that was fun. It's fun. I'm. This is one thing I've always been comfortable with is the radios. I
Yeah.
think largely due to my occupation, but also because I've listened to ATC so much. Like I just kind of had the flow already in my head. Um, so yeah, I went to Chico and it was great. And then my other the long cross country. I went up a little bit past Chico to another town up that way, but like in that same the area where I lived as a kid up
That's cool.
in the North State. Yeah, it was really cool. Like I remember the first time like flying up there and looking like, oh, there's like I've eaten at that Mexican restaurant before. Like as you're
Right.
flying up the valley, and you follow the Sacramento River. It's really pretty. It's a beautiful place to fly. I still actually that's where I was going to go today, but maintenance.
Oh man, that sucks. Yeah, that's pretty cool though that you got to kind of full circle it back to where you grew up.
Yeah, it was a good connection for me. I actually lived for a time. I lived basically right off the departure end of the main runway there, and it was pretty cool in the 80s when I lived there. I'm showing my age a little bit. In the 80s when I was living there, there's Air Force bases everywhere here. The airport I fly out of is a former Air Force base. We have two airports in Sacramento. We have a ton of airports in Sacramento, which is weird to say. It's not a terribly big city, but we're like overloaded with airports. But north of us is Beale Air Force Base. Beale is still a U-2 base, so I get to see U-2s out there every once in a while, which is amazing. But
That is really cool. Yeah.
in the 80s, I was about 2 miles off the departure end of their main runway, and SR-71s would come and do touch and goes up there sometimes. So you would
Dude,
see you'd see these blackbirds just blasting off. It would shake the whole apartment. It was wild. Yeah,
dude, that would be awesome.
yeah, it was so cool.
Yeah. I thought I had a good story with Whiteman Air Force Base here in Missouri. Whenever I was training, we had Whiteman right next to us. And so we'd see B2s all the time. But SR
Yeah,
71s, you got me beat by a lot.
yeah. Well, the SR-71s, that was about the end of their life, 88 or 89, something like that. They stopped flying them. But we still, like it was. I was on a training flight, and I saw on ADSB some weird call sign, at like plus 3,000 feet on ForeFlight, and I was like, I wonder what that is, Vader 1 or something. And I'm like, it's up here somewhere. I look up and it was a U-2 going right over the top of us. It was like, whoa, that's wild.
That is insane. Yeah. Well, that would be really cool to see.
Yeah. So Beale is to my north and Travis is to the west from here. And then in Sacramento, McClellan's where I fly out of. And Mather is another one. There's another big flight school there. I'm kind of I'm underneath the Delta of Mather. But one thing that's awesome is both of those stayed open as airports. So Mather gets used for a lot of freight operations. UPS and FedEx fly out of there a lot. And then McClellan, where I am, is a Cal Fire base and a
Oh,
Coast
nice.
Guard base. Yeah, so this time of year, Cal Fire is very active. They'll stage some of the contract equipment. So right now there's a DC-10 firefighter sitting there. You'll see all kinds of those contract firefighting planes come in there, and and then there's this Cal Fire's tanker base. Those we're in the pattern with those guys all the time. I remember it's not usually towered. They'll open a tower as we get it more into fire season. And I remember, in training at one point, I was in the downwind, and the tower controller said, "Okay, maintain visual separation from the I think it was a C-130. You'll be number 2 behind him." I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll stay behind the big fella, and I'll be number 2."
Yeah. You're
It's
like, let's
wild
wait
seeing those
turbulence
things.
again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild seeing those big planes. But a lot of times we're just CTAF. We just have
Yeah.
to negotiate. And they're great, and they're always good about letting us know if they have an active incident they're working, as
Right.
opposed to just training. A nice way of saying stay out of our way, which, we
Exactly.
do
Yes.
anyway. But
Yeah.
it happened the other day when I was flying. One of their tankers was leaving on an active while I was taxiing back. I was done for the day. And he said, leaving the tanker base on an active call. And, so I made the call really quick. Hey, anyone else coming out of the tanker base? Because I hadn't entered the main taxiway yet. I was like, I'll just sit here,
Right.
I'll
Yeah.
just sit here and watch the parade. But the next
Yeah.
plane wasn't coming out for a bit.
Don't let me get in your way in a 150 or 172.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, my bad, dude.
Yeah.
That's awesome, though. So you've done quite a bit of flying in a short amount of time. Then on your own, it seems like just. I know you said part of the videos were training and whatnot, but you've
Yeah.
put out a lot of really good videos. Obviously, you said that you do video work for a profession, so that's
Yeah.
probably why they're awesome quality. But
Yeah, might have something to do with it. Yeah, so I work in broadcast television. I direct sports. I'm a freelance director. So, like video production. I've been in video production since I was 17, since I was living up in Chico.
oh, wow,
So it started initially with just me putting an action camera on the dash and recording the headset during my lessons, so I could go back and debrief it, and listen. It was crazy. Like, I realized, like, a lot of times when I watched it back, like, man, I never even heard the instructor say that, because I was just so task saturated,
yeah,
like he was telling me what to do and my brain just didn't process it. And that was wild to see that. It was wild to see, to see me not,
not comprehend
understand.
anything that he
Yeah.
said. Yeah,
It was like, and I had no recollection of him saying that. So it's an interesting thing to do. I really recommend it. If your CFI is okay with it, of course. So that's how it started. But then I thought be cool to see something other than the inside of the cockpit, So
yeah,
first I had one on the faces and I put one behind, and you can't really see the instrument panel or what I'm doing with the yoke because our bodies are blocking the way. I do have these glasses now, the Meta Ray-Bans, so I can record that, which has been a really good like debrief tool. I
yeah,
can see because you can tell what you're looking at, like checking airspeed.
yeah. That would be
Um,
awesome.
yeah, it works really well for that. And but I was like, well, like when I was really trying to perfect the flare, and it's like I think I'm doing it right, but it doesn't feel right, So I put a camera underneath the tail on the tie down hook,
Yeah,
so I could see what was actually happening. Like, oh no, you think you're flaring well, but really the nose wheel's coming down at the same time as the main. It's like, oh shoot, okay, all right, I get it.
yeah,
um so same thing like for the soft field takeoffs, and like it's really good to diagnose what you're doing. So started that, but in the process, like I was like scrubbing through the video. I was like, oh man, that's really pretty, I think I'll post that.
yeah,
So on Instagram I post family stuff. On TikTok I just post aviation stuff. Like, you'll rarely see my face, honestly, on TikTok. There's only a couple times where you actually see me. It's mainly just the pretty pictures. And now, like, that's sort of the point, is getting those pretty pictures. So like, I now have a 360 camera I'll put under the tail, and then sometimes I'll put a normal action camera under one of the wings, pointing out, or I've done one pointing forward too, just to get a different look. Playing around with it and seeing what works. The ultimate was when I was in Hawaii this month. That was this month. Got some incredible pictures over there.
yeah. That was awesome. I know. What was it? Molokai, I think, where you're flying below the mountains on the
Yeah,
coast.
yeah. So I flew twice there. I went the day after I got there. I did a checkout flight with one of the flight schools there. So I did an hour of ground where they teach about their weird airspace and all the frequencies you have to talk to. And then you go up with an instructor just to prove you're a competent pilot. So stall, slow flight. What would you do in an emergency? If you lost your engine right now, what would you do? They don't actually. It's different there. It's way different than what we do on the mainland. They don't actually pull the power because you're when we were doing that, we were at 1,500. You're
Oh
rarely
wow.
the highest I ever flew there was 2,000. Same thing with the stall. We didn't go to a full break. I was like, oh, I've never recovered just on the horn before.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, he's like, you can recover. I'm like, oh, but he's like, yeah, go ahead. I was like, all right, well, you know, like, all right, we'll go ahead and recover.
You didn't even go to Buffett, just the horn.
Yeah, just the horn,
Oh wow.
because you're not very high. You know,
Yeah,
you don't, and if something were to happen, there's nowhere to land. You know,
yeah.
it's most of the time you're over the water or right over the shoreline, which is rocky and cliffy. But um, when I came back and flew with a family member, my first passenger, and the story comes full circle here. So um, also landing there is crazy. My hat is off to aviators that come out of Hawaii,
Is it
especially
windy?
Maui. It's crazy, man. So
Yeah.
my school here is super conservative. They want to keep us all safe. They're, you know, like all of their rules are very, very conservative. And one of their rules is there's a 17 knot max wind, including gusts. And that's for everyone. That's for CFIs, for everybody.
Okay.
17 knots. In fairness, you know, you rarely lose a lesson to wind here. You know, it just doesn't get that windy here very often. So, you know, the max the max crosswind you're probably ever going to hit is 10 knots. You know, like, and you really like have to go hunting for that, right? You
Yeah.
have to specifically find a, you know, an airport with a runway. Mather's a good example. The runways there are misaligned with the normal winds. Um, but you know, just to get a 10 knot crosswind in, you know, the the day I did my checkout flight, it was 21 gusting 31, and
Ooh,
that's, you know, that's just every day there. Once the sun comes up, that's every day. That's the trade winds. And so I, you know, I'd never flown in anything like that, let alone land. And I was really happy. I was really happy with how the landings went. I had to do 3 landings as part of my checkout, considering I had, you know, no real experience doing that. But it also made me realize, like, I landed, you know, reasonably well. They land differently there, by the way. I don't know if you want to get into that, but
yeah. Go ahead.
everything's different over there.
Yeah.
Um, they land at so uh, I'm sure most people watching this podcast have flown a 172, 65 knots, right?
Yep.
You come in with whatever flaps you're going to use, and 65 knots. They come in 80 knots all the way to the round out,
Oof.
because that
That's
21 gusting 31, the wind speed and direction are just always changing. And so, and 10 degrees flaps is it.
that's what I was going to say.
So
Not much flaps, I'm guessing.
yeah, and so you float forever, and you're fighting those winds the whole time during that float. You know, it's like I do more work, more rudder work in one landing than I had done in a month over here. You know, like, it's, you're really dancing on those rudders. And same thing, like, I'll get into that Molokai flight, but we did a short field takeoff from there. So short field, right? 10 degrees flaps, full power, hold the brakes, and then normally you climb VX.
Yeah.
They climb at 80,
Oh wow.
uh, because you never know when you're going to lose 20 knots of headwind,
Yeah, that's fair.
right? And so, yeah, so uh, climbing at 80, landing at 80,
That would
it's
be
just,
intense.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's super. I want to go back and just do lessons. You know, like go back and like just book lessons like 3 days in a row or something, just to get used to landing there. Because I guarantee you, if you did, you know, 10, 12 laps of the pattern for 3 consecutive days, nothing you would experience in Sacramento would ever bother you ever again.
And now you have the knowledge that if you do have crazy winds, which weren't predicted, you can come in a little hotter with a little less flaps,
Yeah,
and you're safe. You
yeah,
know.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I passed the checkout, but I opted to have a CFI go with us, because I was like, you know what, the radios here are fairly complicated. It's a plane I don't know that well. It's just a different, you know, it's a different version of the 172 than I've ever flown, with different radios and different, you know, different avionics. Plus, if the winds are totally crazy, I've got a backup.
Right.
So I ended up going with a CFI, and we flew. So I'm gonna butcher the name of the airport. So from Maui, uh, I'm gonna look it up because I don't want to mess it up. Um, so from Maui, we were flying out of the same airport that we landed uh, with my family. It's
Oh wow.
that. So you're holding short for an A330. Uh,
Jeez.
crazy stuff. Yeah. Um, so that's Kahului on the north side of Maui, which is the windy side. So we take off from Kahului and fly over to Molokai, and Molokai, it's only there's like a channel between the islands. It's only about 10 minutes when you lose contact with Maui and before you get to the coast of Molokai. But that north side of Molokai is there's not anything going on there. So that pretty video you saw, those sea cliffs, they're like among the tallest sea cliffs in the world. They go up to like 3,000 feet. Um, but the cloud deck was like 2,500. So I'm at 1,500 next to these, 2,500, 3,000 foot sea cliffs. It's just absolutely stunning. And then there's this really cool airport. The CFI recommended. He's like, hey, if you just want to do one really cool thing, let's go to Kalapapa. So Kalapapa is on the north side of Molokai, and it's this. There's a little village there. There's only like 70 people who live there, and the only way in or out is a small plane. They
Oh
boats aren't allowed to land. Boats have to stay quarter-mile offshore, and there's no roads to the other side of the island. Um, there's a hiking trail, but you have to get special permission. You have to get a special permit. There's like a locked gate. So
wow.
literally, the only way in or out of Kalapapa is a small plane. So people who live there, there's an airline there that provides a subsidized air taxi service. So like if they have to go to a doctor's appointment on Oahu, they call and like arrange to be picked up. And there's a little terminal there in Kalapapa. And it's out on the strip is just out on this little point. I'll send you a picture you can
Yeah,
add in here.
that'd be awesome.
There's a lighthouse and there's this little strip, this little narrow, this little narrow short strip. And it's just, it's right up against these sea cliffs and it's just absolutely breathtaking. And so I flew there. I mentioned it was my first passenger, and that passenger was my wife's son. He was the son of my wife's husband who died.
Oh wow.
He was only, I think, 2 when his father died. So went totally full circle there,
Yeah,
closed the loop on that, and it felt really good.
that's really
It
awesome.
really, he and I are very close, and it felt really cool for him to be my first passenger,
Yeah.
and for us to go to this amazing place. It's so Kalapapa. If anyone wants to look it up, the village. If you look it up on Wikipedia, the village used to support. There was a leprosy colony there, and so it's intentionally uh, hard to reach. That's intentional, right? Like they would when they dropped patients off there, they would just like shove them off a boat. They wouldn't even land the boat. Like the patients would have to swim to shore.
Oh
And
wow.
if they didn't get attacked by sharks or drown, then they lived in this leprosy colony. So the this little village that's left, I think there's now just 2 former patients living there, and then a handful of other people. And you're not supposed to it's not supposed to go into the village or bother any of those people. So we just landed at the airport and took a couple pictures and then took back off.
That's really cool though.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is really cool. So, how old, if you don't mind me asking, how old was your wife's son whenever you took him flying for the first time?
Yeah, so he was my passenger. Just he's 33. He's flown before. He flew with his grandfather, so he's been upside down in a plane.
Yeah.
His grandfather was an air show pilot, and actually just stopped flying a few years ago. So yeah, he flew air shows and was an acrobatic instructor, and yeah, pretty well known. And so my wife's son had, like he'd been in the small planes and, had experienced all the, the weird sensations and smells and everything that come with those small planes.
Yes.
Um, but like it was really special for me to have him be
Your
my
first
first
passenger.
passenger. Yeah.
That is really cool, man. Yeah, that's insane. I don't even know how to put words to that, but that would be a really awesome feeling, you know?
Yeah, it was, like the idea for that flight actually came from a YouTuber. It just never occurred to me that like you can just rent a plane somewhere, a YouTuber, Fly Me to the Fun.
Yeah.
He's out of Atlanta.
Yep.
Drew, I think is his name, Drew. He posted a video about a year ago of him flying from Honolulu over to Maui.
Yep.
Um, and I was like, that's what gave me that. I was like, wait a second, I could fly a plane while I'm in Hawaii, right? And so like that was on my radar 6 months before I got my license. I didn't realize until after I had done it. I went back and watched that video, and he landed at Kalapapa. But and now having done that now, I want to fly everywhere I go.
Yeah.
It's I very rarely have for work reasons. I'm usually getting in, going to work, and then I'm first flight out. Very rarely have any time off, but it does come up occasionally. Or maybe if I'm going somewhere with the family, like my wife and I were talking about going to Portland. I bet that would be a beautiful place to fly.
Yeah.
Find a school there, and I probably wouldn't go through the whole checkout process. I would just say like, yeah, let me just go up with one of your 172s and your instructor, and I'll drive, and he'll keep me out of trouble, and just show me what the best sites are in your area.
That's crazy. I've never actually thought about doing that. Is I've always thought everywhere I go, I have to do a checkout flight. Then I'm going to rent the airplane, and I never even thought twice about asking, "Hey, can I just take an instructor and fly, and then he can just be there just in case?"
Yeah, I mean, like having, it made sense in Hawaii to have that instructor there as a safety blanket, if you will, and honestly, it made it much more enjoyable for me because like I wasn't having to look up the next frequency all the time. By the time it's only like a 20-minute flight from Kahului over to Kalapapa, and you're on 5 frequencies.
Oh wow.
Like, yeah, it's a lot. You have to they you have to get a ground clearance. You have to get a clearance while you're on the ground. They tell you there's 4 different directions you can depart, and you tell them which way you want to depart, and they give you a path and an altitude. So even VFR, you get a clear direct. Uh, it's all landmarks. The owner of the school told me that they used to do it with headings, right? Fly heading 330, but it's so windy that if you're flying 330, you might end up in a totally different place.
That's fair.
And so
Yeah.
it's all visual now, right? So there's like if you head out, I forget, it was southwest. There's a mill, and then there's a hill, as visual landmarks. And then once you get there, they'll let you go, and you go over to center, and then they have something there. We have CTAF, right?
Yep.
In Hawaii, they have something when center lets you go to something called ITAF, Island Traffic Advisory Frequency. And so when we were going over to Kalapapa, there was a tour helicopter that was really, kind of following the same path along the coastline, which is very typical. And we were just talking to each other the whole time. He was like, he flew up one of those canyons, and he's like, okay, I'm coming back out. Where are you now? And I was, my instructor's like, we're a half mile offshore at 1500. And he's like, okay, I'm going to come out to where you are, but I'll stay at 2000, and so we're just like negotiating separation.
Yeah.
Cause we were kind of following each other the whole way. And I guess that's how they do it all around the islands. Also their pattern altitudes are all 800 instead of 1000 AGL. I don't know why on that one, but
That's kind of cool though.
yeah, everything's different over there. And it was really fun. I just, like I want to go, I want to fly. It'd be a really cool, a guy posted on Facebook the other day that he's landed at every airport on every island in Hawaii. And that'd be a cool thing to
That would be a cool thing to
check
document.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Be really cool.
So, kind of a weird question. Whenever you were flying in Hawaii, How did you connect your cameras to their airplanes? Do you use like the eyelets,
Yeah,
or do you use like the strut?
it's a great question. Yeah, so I have from In-Flight Cam.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few of their mounts. I have for inside. I have a suction cup mount. I have a strut mount, and I have a couple of the tie down mounts. Um, I ended up in Hawaii. I just used two of the tie down mounts. The For one thing, like the strut mount is pretty big, and I was already bringing a lot of stuff. I was bringing my whole flight bag.
Yeah,
I'd have my headset and my logbook, and all of those things. And plus the strut mount is it takes some time, right? It takes time to get that thing on and off. The tie down mounts are really fast and really secure. I really love those. That's my daily driver for the videos that I do. Um, just because it's so quick, and I'm sure everyone has the same experience. You have the plane for 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever it is, and like you're getting it, you know, right at your time, or maybe 5 minutes before, and you got to get it back and get all your stuff out for the next pilot, that's got that plane.
yeah.
If I someday, maybe I'll have a stake in a fractional ownership or something. But for now, with rental planes, the tie down mounts are, fast and easy and really secure.
I was going to ask that. I've never actually used one. I've thought about it, but I don't. I, I didn't want to spend the money without talking to somebody about how secure they are, because I am very cheap and I don't like to rebuy things.
Yeah.
So I don't want to spend
Uh,
another however much on an Insta 360 because this one fell off the airplane.
yeah. So I can tell you they're really well made. It's a great design. It actually goes through the tie down mount, right?
Hmm.
So for the mount to fail, it just really isn't possible, right? Because it goes through the tie down. How the camera mounts to that is the only thing that gave me a little bit of pause. The first time I did it, I put my oldest action camera on there. I use all I use all DJI cameras.
Yeah,
My I have 5 of their cameras different, so I use their 360 camera because that way the color all matches.
yeah.
The color science is the same, so when I intercut them, it matches perfectly. So I use my oldest, least valuable one the first time I did it on that tail mount. And it was funny, my instructor, I asked permission, and she was like, yeah, just don't tail strike. And I was like,
Ooh.
that's always the goal, to not tail strike. If I tail strike, I think the action camera is the least of my worries.
No, you'd be
um,
surprised. Where I trained at was a school, like a 141 school. And that was one of the most common things that the airplane would go down for at my school, other than maintenance,
really,
was, yeah, the eyelet on the back would get just completely ground off. Not all the way off.
really,
Usually it would just grind because they're circular, right? So it grind the
yeah,
bottom of it enough to where it was open and you couldn't tie a rope in there.
really,
Yeah, but
wow,
we're students trying to do short field, soft field on asphalt all the time.
yeah,
So
huh,
yeah,
yeah. Hopefully, hopefully I never have a tail strike, but yeah, my camera will take the brunt of it if I do.
it happens. At the end of the day, as long as you don't bend anything inside there, it's almost like a little
It'll
skid
save their
plate.
eyelet.
Yeah.
Yeah, my sacrificial camera will protect their eyelet.
Oh no. Oh, that's awesome. So
um,
what?
and then also from In-Flight Cam, I bought their adapter to record the headset audio.
Yeah.
Um, um, so if I put a camera inside the cockpit, I'll typically plug that in. So it plugs into your headphone jack, and then you plug the headset into that. So you don't need an extra. You don't lose a headphone
Hmm.
connection because of it. Or you could use a spare, like if you're putting the camera like back here, you could just use one of the rears. Um,
As long as you don't do pilot
when
isolate, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So and that works really well. They have different versions depending on what kind of camera you're using. If you're using a smartphone, if versus an action camera or whatever.
Do you use the one with just a 3.5 millimeter jack plug, or do you use a specific one for your device?
So for the DJI Osmo Action cameras, the audio comes in on the USB-C connection.
Hmm.
So it's a USB-C on those. So it just has the male headphone connector, and then the female, so you can still use that port for for your headset,
Yeah.
and then a USB-C on the other end.
Okay.
But they sell the one with a 3.5 millimeter also, if that's what your device takes.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was trying to figure out for my Insta360 X5, and I got the one with the 3.5 millimeter jack, and then found out later that it uses USB C. But Insta360 came out with an adapter, so you can still have
Oh yeah.
your USB C plug, so you can plug it in for charge or whatever else, and then you could use the 3.5 millimeter jack for the audio.
Perfect.
Not sure how well it works yet because I haven't used it, but we're gonna find out.
Yeah, try it
Yeah.
out. Do you put your 360 inside the cockpit then, like right on the dash?
I do. Yeah. Like I said, I'm scared, and I'm cheap, so
Yeah,
I just
that's
stick
fair.
it right in between, and then I kind of fold it down, kind of where it goes with the screen, so it sees everything
Yeah.
inside and everything outside. And if there's a weird like cut mark, it's usually in line with the pillars and in line with the bottom of the windscreen.
Oh, perfect.
So I'm not really looking at that anyway.
Yeah. I would recommend if you're going to try something outside the airplane, start with just buy a factory refurb or something. You can get the the older GoPros or the older DJI Action for like $150.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and and try it with that. The one thing I saw a guy from N-Flight Cam on a podcast, or I heard him on a podcast, saying whatever you do, because people are worrying about losing their camera. So whatever you do, don't tether the camera to the plane. Right?
Oh,
People are tempted.
Yeah.
It'll smack around and do a lot of damage to your plane.
Yeah, that's a
banging around.
high-speed nunchuck right there.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that leaves the like, well, you're going to lose your camera, and but better that than do all that damage to the airplane.
Right. Yeah, I never thought about that. Yeah, I might just stick to the inside stuff for a while. That's what it is. That's awesome. So, what's up next on the agenda for you? Like, where is your next? Like, where do you want to go to record some cool stuff?
Yeah. So, I want to keep exploring. So we have something here in California, pretty recent. We have the Fly California passport.
Oh, nice.
That you can get your passport book stamped at. They have there's like something like 230 public use airports in California, and they have like 200 of them now. They have stamps at. So I would like to keep collecting those stamps. As far afield as I can get to and back within a rental period from here. And then, like I said, I would like to, find other places to rent a plane and go, and just, I think like anywhere in the Pacific Northwest is going to be beautiful. And that's, it's a short flight for me.
Yeah.
Portland and Seattle are, just a short direct flight on Southwest. And maybe in SoCal. I lived in San Diego for a short time. It'd be awesome to fly down there. I've actually flown out of that with my buddy with his Bonanza. I flew out of Montgomery Field.
Oh, that'd be cool.
It's a really cool airport.
Yeah.
And it's obviously beautiful around there. So I would like to do that. And also like I'm working on my instrument, but I'm in zero hurry, and also, like I have no intentions of flying in continuous IMC.
Right.
I'm never going to do that. Single pilot for sure. I'm never going to do that. I want to get the instrument rating because it'll make me a much better pilot, and maybe I'll use it to punch through a layer.
Yeah. Like get some VFR over the top.
Yeah, just to get on top. Yeah. but I, so I'm not in any rush to get to the finish line on that instrument rating. I think before I get there, I have a whole bunch of other things that I want to do. Upset prevention and recovery. There's classes up here in the foothills fairly
Yeah.
regularly, and I would love to do that. Um, my DPE said something after my check ride. After we were walking out, he recommended that, and he said, if the first time you're upside down in an airplane is a surprise, it's not going to go very well for you.
It's probably really
And
fair. Yeah.
yeah, so I want to do that. I want to get my tail wheel endorsement.
That's a fun one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to get my high performance and complex endorsements, and so I'll probably do several of those along the way before I get to my instrument.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those you can do in 3 days or a week or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And one thing that's on my wish list, and I don't know when I'll do it, but I would love to get my seaplane rating too.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, and I like, not that I'm gonna fly seaplanes, but just spending the time taking off and landing on the water, I think would be super cool. So there's some places here in Northern California that have it. It's just a week class, or there's a place up in Seattle that does it, and I think it would just be awesome to do. As a one of the many things. My intention is to keep collecting
Ratings, certificates.
ratings
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
endorsements for as long as I'm flying.
That's
Because
great goal.
it's yeah, it's just keeps me learning, and it keeps me in the airplane with a better pilot. I'm I'm a very cautious pilot, for all the reasons. I have my
Yes.
family, and I'm not a daredevil. I'm not a risk taker. But like my caution, the amount I'm careful is only goes to the extent of my ability.
Right.
So I can opt to not fly if the weather's marginal, or I've made the no go decision a couple times because I didn't feel great, and I'm really proud of that.
Yeah. That's a big one.
I did a you know what cement, and I'm really glad this happened, but I went up with my instructor one time, and I knew, like, I had just come back from out of town and I hadn't slept, and I told him, I was like, hey man, I'm probably not going to fly that well today. I'm just, keep your eye on me. I'm not I'm not 100% there. And it was close to my check ride. We were starting to, like, okay, let's practice maneuvers, was the lesson that day. And we went out to the practice area. I ended up, like, missing radio calls, flying across final, got out to the practice area and couldn't complete a maneuver successfully. And he's like, all right, well, let's go over to Marysville and do some landings. And okay, so set the GPS to Marysville, and all of a sudden I'm on top of the airport, and I'm at like 6,000 feet
Huh.
because I just hadn't,
Yeah.
like,
You spaced out. Yeah.
and I was like, okay, all right, so so I got myself, got down, got into the downwind, and like, I was making that base turn, and I was like, man, I'm a mess, and I just went full power. I was like, we're going back, like,
Yeah.
and it just, like, that cemented for me. I flew us right back to base, and and the lesson was over. I didn't even think I landed. Oh no, I did, and it was a terrible landing, right? And so, so I, but it was good that I had that experience with an instructor. Now I know, like, if it was me solo, like, it's an absolute no go,
Right.
right? Like, whatever happened with my travel, that put me in this position where I only slept for 4 hours, like, I don't even have to leave the house.
Yep.
It's just cancel. And so that's one of the things I'm kind of proud of, is I do that I'm safe checklist at home.
Yeah.
Right. I don't even go to because you're just building in continuation bias if you're already at the airport, if you're already standing there with the door open and the key in your hand, so like I have to pass that I'm safe before I even get in the car to go to the airport.
That's a good rule. Yeah, it's really good aeronautical decision making. That's a huge
That
part
was the
of.
only good thing I did that day. Was decide to not fly anymore. That's what I told. I was like, the only thing I did right that day was deciding to not fly anymore.
Hey, sometimes that's the best choice, and you learn the most from it.
Yep.
But
Yeah, and good to have that experience with an instructor there
yeah,
instead of while I was on my own and panicking.
yeah, because that could have ended up really bad. You freaking out. Like I don't feel good. How am I
Yeah.
going to get down? Yeah.
Yeah, I would just like,
Whew.
yeah, who no one wants to be in that situation.
Right. Yeah. Right on, dude. Well, I really appreciate sharing all of that because there's a lot of people out there that will never talk about that if that happened to them because they're the ego. We're pilots.
Yeah.
We got to be able to do this. But it's good to hear
Yeah.
people talk about making a choice that isn't the cool choice or the whatever choice. It's the right choice. But
Yeah, and I appreciate when I hear other people talk about it. Like the fact that I chose to take a CFI with me in Hawaii. Like there's no ego there.
no,
Like that's just, and honestly, it made it so much more enjoyable for me because I was looking out the window more while he was busy, changing frequencies and dealing with all that. It was pretty funny. Along the coast of Molokai, at one point, I was looking up this valley and I just go, whoa. And the CFI is like, what's wrong? Do you need me to take the controls? And I was like, no, man. I know you see this every day, but I'm just blown away by this.
yeah,
I'm like, I'm good. But yeah, I just, like, I think it's important, that we share those, like those no-go decisions and honestly mistakes,
yeah,
like it's important that, we talk about that. There's no such thing as a perfect flight.
nope,
Even 10,000-hour pilots, will still have slight imperfections in every flight. And like I openly talk about mistakes I've made, whether it's like I left one of the chains off the other day when I parked the plane on a windy day. Like that was a dumb thing that I did, but like I don't think I'll make that mistake again because I owned up to it.
right,
I talked about it, and now like today after I didn't fly, like took a couple steps away from the plane and turned around and looked back like 1, 2, 3 chains, 2 chocks, good.
yeah,
Like I because I like I didn't try and bury the fact that I had made that mistake.
yeah. That's big. It takes a lot of accountability to do that, But it's great that you learn from it, and like you said, you're not going to do that again for sure.
Yeah, probably not. I hope
Yeah,
not. But acknowledging that it happened, and I took off one time with carb heat on,
yeah,
and it was a touch and go, and I just never pushed the carb heat back in, and I was in the upwind. I was like, man, this thing's not climbing like it normally does. So I was looking around, like I thought, well, maybe the mixture's leaned or something. I looked over, it's like, oh man, that's really dumb, but like I I was that was on one of my solos, and the first thing I did when I got back to my instructors, told them what I did, and in the wrong conditions, that mistake could kill you.
yeah,
So um, it's important that you don't brush it away, like
yeah. Oh, no
look
big
at it.
deal. I
For
made it.
me,
Yeah,
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 right, yeah, no big deal. Took off just fine.
yeah,
Yeah, but right, you weren't near the capacity of the airplane. You weren't at high density altitude.
yeah.
Like
Those
you
little
know,
things add up with other
you were on
things.
a long runway.
Yeah,
Yeah, like so. Then that was the day he taught me the floor to door scan.
yeah,
Before you hit that full power, like fuel on both, mixture full rich, carb heat off, primer in and lock, keys on both. Like just do that. Boom, everything
yep.
good.
Real quick, you got it all. You're
Yep.
still rolling. Hit.
And the trim,
Yep.
right? The trim. I during one of my stage checks, our chief instructor noticed I wasn't looking at the trim on on my touch and goes, and he's like, you got to reset your trim on these touch and goes. And I was like, oh, no one's ever said that to me before. And so he made me put it in a really high nose up trim and take off,
Yeah,
and
you're
he was
yeah,
right. He was there to make sure that, that we didn't stall it. But like, yeah, I was, like really pushing on that yoke
yeah,
to keep the airspeed. And he's like, it's one of those little things, like you got to look at it every time.
yeah. Because if you're not ready for it, as soon as that thing lifts off, it boop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep. It'll drop you right. Yeah. You stall spin like immediately.
yep,
So, that was a really good lesson. Every time I've flown with that guy, he's had some really good lesson
that's awesome.
for me.
Yeah,
Yeah. You want to hear another one? I'll tell you
yeah.
another
Let's
one
go.
that was really good. So McClellan, where we fly out of, is it's over 10,000 feet of runway.
Yeah,
Um, being who I am, so our parking is all the way at one end, and most people, once they're comfortable, will do an intersection takeoff. I use the full runway every time. That extra 5 minutes of taxiing, I'm not worried about losing that time.
right.
Um, and so we during the stage check, it was another stage check, and he pulled the power like in the downwind or something. Oh yeah, my instructor does this to me all the time, no problem, right? And so he goes, okay, take off again, or taxi down, get off the runway, taxi all the way back down full length. And he said, take off and just keep climbing, and I'll tell you when to start your crosswind turn. I was like, okay, yeah, no problem. So climbing out at just on runway heading, and at 800 feet he pulled the power.
Yeah,
So I'm which is 730 feet AGL, and I had never done this before, so now like the airport's behind me, so I there's a startle factor. He hadn't told me what he was going to do, so there's startle factor, and like, okay, well, I need some airspeed, I push that elevator down, and decided on a left turn back, not because of wind, but because there's more room on that side. The parallel taxiway is on that side. If I can't make it all the way back to the runway, there's at least a taxiway in grass I could potentially land on.
right.
And to my great surprise, I got it back with altitude and airspeed to spare,
Yeah,
back to that runway. So we we landed. He said, keep taxiing all the way down to Charlie. And so at intersection Charlie, we turned around. He goes, take off again, and at 800 pull the power and return to the airport. So take off, and 800, now I know it's coming. I'm totally prepared what to do. At 800 pull the power, and didn't make it back.
yep.
Had to, and the lesson there is, yeah, if you'd taken off at Charlie and lost your engine,
You're farther
you
out.
wouldn't have made it back to the airport.
Yeah.
Right. So it was like, what, that's a great lesson from a guy with many, many decades of experience, and actually doing it, not just saying it, but actually experiencing it. Man, we're not going to make it back.
And the difference also is the first time you had the startle factor, so you probably lost a good 3 seconds before you started your turn.
Yeah, 10 probably.
Yeah.
It was just, I was in shock. Like, what are you doing? Did you do that on purpose?
But we need that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's
No,
it's hard to simulate the startle factor,
right.
No,
those are always the best learning experiences. Those they tell you they're going to do something and they do the opposite.
Right, do the opposite. Yeah,
that's fun.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's crazy that you knew it was coming the second time, so you had a lot more initial reaction. You still didn't quite make it. So good for you.
Yeah.
On that lesson, and always
it's a great one. It stuck.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
And what are you saving? 5 minutes of taxiing?
Right. And during that time,
to use the full length,
you can put in whatever you need in your instruments.
Yeah.
You can
put frequencies in, program the GPS,
let the engine warm up if you're the first guy for the day.
Yeah. Exactly.
You're going to be sitting there anyways. You might as well spend it moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I appreciate you coming on. It's been really great talking to you. I have one question that I ask everybody close to the end of the show, and that is,
Okay.
if you could have any aircraft that you wanted for personal use, you didn't have to pay for it, so money is no factor. What aircraft would it be and why?
Okay, that's a yeah. I should have prepared for this question. I've seen you ask people that, right? So the answer would be this is going to be surprising. It would probably be like a 182,
Okay.
something like that. And the why 182 has all the space I would ever need, um, and I don't have any interest in flying multi, um, because I know I'm not going to fly enough to stay like really proficient, and multi is just so much more. It's just so much more workload. And so, maybe a 206.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be a single engine, uh, probably 182. And I know that's, if, like money is no object, and 182 is kind of an odd choice, but
No, it's a great choice.
it's perfect for me, right?
Yeah.
I already know that I would have no problem learning to fly a 182,
And it's a
right?
great
And
all around
and
airplane. Like you said, you could put whatever
right,
you want in it. You can go to big strips, you can go to little strips, it's a great
yeah,
all around aircraft. So
yeah,
that's really cool.
yeah,
Do you
yeah.
plan on like crossing paths with work and joy with the aviation stuff?
It's probably not. Maybe, I sort of like think about ways that there could be a crossover. And the reality is that the things that in sports, like sometimes we'll have a plane orbiting the stadium,
Yeah.
just doing that live shot of the stadium. um I don't want to do that. That's boring. It's
Right.
just, like it's great for time building if you're trying to get to 1500 to get to the airlines, but those guys crisscross the country doing that.
Yeah.
Um and yeah, I don't know. Like I actually have. I can't talk about it because of an NDA, but I'm doing something this fall in my profession that's aviation related, but it has nothing to do with me being in an
Oh,
airplane.
nice.
But I'm just excited that the event is aviation related. It's at an airport, and in a perfect world, I would figure out a plane to rent to fly myself to that airport that the event is at, but there probably won't be parking
Well,
anyway. But
that's kind of what I was thinking. I didn't know if you were eventually looking at getting an aircraft for yourself to fly to, different shooting sites that you're doing work at. I didn't know how that would work for you.
yeah, I don't, like I don't. I think realistically, I think a outright ownership of an aircraft, unless it's in your scenario where it's free, I think that's unrealistic. So maybe someday a fractional ownership or a club,
Yeah.
that might be in the cards. Right now, so one of the places I work at a lot is in Van Nuys, and it's literally right next to the Van Nuys airport.
That would be cool.
Like we're, the LAPD's helicopter operations are right next to where we are, and you hear the planes all day. I would love to fly in there, and just like hop on a scooter to get to work.
Yeah. Do you carry equipment? Because I don't know how that would work.
No,
Okay, good. It's already
no,
there, so you don't
no.
need that. Just
Yeah,
get you a
it
one wheel
shows
or
up. Yeah, it
something. Yeah.
meets me there. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I would love to do that just for the flex. Like like what kind of a flex would that be?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I just flew my plane in. There's actually a guy who I worked with at that place who has a 310 hangared right there, and man, that would be
That
awesome.
would be cool.
But
Yeah.
like if I'm ever gonna do that, um, it's complicated airspace down there, right? So
Yeah.
I would get with an instructor, and like, all right, let's fly out of this airspace and fly back in,
Yep.
and I would do that probably 3 times, right, to get comfortable with, how you get into LA's airspace, stay out of that Bravo. You know, it's complicated.
Yeah.
Although Sacramento is weirdly complicated for not being a terribly big city, um, but LA, you know, it's a whole different level. It's the, you know, busiest airport in California,
Right.
second busiest, third busiest in the country, something like that.
That's insane.
Uh, yeah, it's, you know, so you know, it's a whole different level of flying down there,
Yeah.
you know, and that's not where I am right now. So if I was ever going to try and do that, I would, you know, have an instructor, you know, walk me through it several times before I went at it solo.
Not a bad idea. All right.
And also, this is something I've actually thought about already. If I was ever going to fly myself to work, I would I would buy a commercial airline ticket, a refundable ticket. So the plan A is that I'm going on, you know, I'm flying Southwest to Burbank, right?
Right.
Which is really close to where I work down there. And only if everything's perfect am I getting in this 172 and flying, you know,
That's also really smart. Yeah.
canceling the ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, you know, like, so I don't build in continuation bias. Like, well, now I have to be there. Like if I, you know, if I don't fly in this weather that's, you know, or just outside my personal minimums, how am I going to get to work? Right. So that would always be answered already.
That's fair.
That,
And
you know,
I also didn't think about that because I don't fly to work either because I can't, it's only like 20 minutes up the road, but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be cool. You know, like the reality is it's not going to be faster or cheaper than flying on Southwest.
Right.
It would be funner,
Yeah.
you know, and I would love to do it occasionally. If I had a situation, you know, where I could take an airplane overnight, which I don't have right now.
Yeah.
You know, the club that I belong to only has 3 planes, and everyone's, you know, needs to train in them. So you know, you can't take an airplane to a different city overnight.
Right. That would be a good flex though. You'd be like, "Hey Joe, did you drive your Maserati in?" "Oh yeah, I got this." You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I you know, I kind of daydream about it, about flying into Van Nuys and then, you know, just, you know, hopping on a one wheel like you said and
Yeah.
rolling into work. Yeah, it's just, yeah, the 172 is right over there tied.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
You know, yeah, it would be awesome.
Real quick, tell me what your handle is on TikTok or wherever you want people to follow you at. What your name is?
Yeah. On TikTok, I think I'm just Geoff Butler, right? I don't even know. I should know that, right?
I think it comes up as Geoff B on mine.
Okay, Geoff B. Yeah. So So on TikTok, I'm at Geoff B. GeoffB. There's a little cartoon of me with an aviation headset on, and yeah, like I said, you won't see much of my face. You won't hear my voice very often. There's only a couple times. I just try and post pretty pictures that I happen to catch while I'm doing something else. You know, every time I go fly and I go back and scrub through the footage, I realize I caught something that I didn't intend to. You know, like oh wow, look at the sun glistening off of the water over there. That's really pretty.
Yeah.
You know, so then I'll just make a little clip and post that.
The unintentional candid moments. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, you know, it's been fun, and you know, like, and to me, it's a way of sharing with other pilots and with people who aren't pilots. Like, yeah, this is what general aviation is.
Yeah.
You know, like this, getting to see this, and you know, like getting to decide, like, hey, that mountain over there is beautiful. I'm going to fly a little closer to it.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like, or man, that I remember going to that lake and water skiing when I was a teenager. I'm going to go take a turn and, you know, make a little low pass over that lake and go see, you know,
Yeah.
go check that out.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's the kind of stuff that we can do. That, you know, people talk about the freedom of general aviation, and it's hard to describe. I didn't understand it until I experienced it myself.
Yep.
You know,
It's fantastic. I know we've mentioned it multiple times with different guests on the podcast, but it is definitely a view that you can't get in any other way of this world. It's great.
100%. And you know, and it's why I was never going to be satisfied with a simulator or a drone or anything like that.
Yep.
You know, like that was never going to scratch that itch that I had. you know, going to those places and seeing those things, and
Feeling it. Yeah. It's great.
yeah, it's yep,
Yeah.
yeah. We're very lucky, aren't
Yes,
we?
sir. Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Everybody go follow Geoff. Geoff B on TikTok. I'll link it in the description. I'll put a little boop up of his picture that he has on there so everybody can find it. It's great content. You won't be disappointed, especially if you watch the Hawaii stuff, because I watch that multiple times every week since he put it on there. It's just great. So thank you for coming on, Geoff. And as always, folks, success starts with a positive attitude. Thanks for watching another episode of the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. And if you have a story to share, let me know.